This subject will be a bit of an exercise in perspective and light. So it's contrast, light to dark, but also getting our perspective and our drawing lines right. So that's why it'll be important to make sure we measure where those lines start and where they finish. So let's see how I go. I find a lot of the architecture in the Mediterranean area fairly similar. Probably Greece has some of the more unique with their domes and the churches. They're probably the most unique in their region, but Italy, France, Spain are really quite universal, which isn't a bad thing. That's not sort of being a criticism. That's actually probably a nice thing, because that almost what I would probably call the classic Italian villa that has the orange roof or the yellowy orange rooftop tiled roof, those terracotta tiles are really super paintable. And I've only had the pleasure of getting to Spain once, but I would love to get to Madrid. That was the one area that we weren't able to get to. But great Mediterranean light, very similar to Australia, and something that I'm very used to and familiar with. And so it's interesting motifs to play with as well. And these buildings really do hold the light so beautifully as well. They really are a challenge to capture that light. But I found the main importance, or the main key, is to make sure we unify the shadows first, and that's what I've done. You can see there's quite a bit of reflected light from the sky, so we need to get that in the shadow, but also up in under where the tile and the wall starts, and the fact that it's looking upwards. There's quite a dark, strong blue sky, so lots of French ultramarine blue with this one. Still using the big brushes. It's only a 9x12, so just trying to keep that light coming through, not wanting to lose the expressive brush mark as well. That's why when we get into the more tighter regions, it's very easy to, one, go down to smaller brushes, but also to tighten up as well. So that's why I do like to make sure I'm keeping a certain fluency, and that actually does take time, practice, and a little bit of confidence. And that's where the more difficult subjects, say with this one, this was actually my second painting for the day. So I started about 8:30 and then started this one early afternoon, both about the same size. Maybe it was one size bigger, the first one, but there are some subjects that really do require just maximum confidence, maximum ability to be able to see that value, see the shape, and knock it in one go. Because I think that's what really does drive the visual excitement, possibly with the paintings that I like or my work. And that's why I do highly recommend doing some still life little studies, more restricted time. We do have the still life video, probably not as complex as that. Sometimes it's just, say, 4 or 5 strawberries, 3 to 5 strawberries, an orange or something. It can be something very simple, and the more simple, the less time I will set. But they do repeat the process of light, dark, warm, cold, shape, edge, and then stepping back to check. And I've probably done 600 of those for the last 15 or 16 years. And I think that's one great little exercise and device that I've used to really sort of keep my confidence up, not that it's not up, but there's a difference between being at my peak or everything functioning well, because I'm trying to paint my best painting that I've ever painted every time I paint. and that's quite a bit of pressure as well. So, with that, it does require me to be almost at, if I was still playing soccer or peak fitness, peak skill levels, it's that similar discipline that I think I've tried to bring over from the sport that I played when I was younger. Even though I still do try and get out for a game of golf every now and then, but it's always tricky to find the time. So now we're doing probably the small area, but it's probably the darkest dark. And I think with that cast shadow, even though it did drop right out of the bottom of the painting, I can see now that I think that's probably going to be an element that I'll probably maybe want to just cut up a little bit so it doesn't run the eye out. Because technically it can run the eye in as well, but I think it's probably just running the eye out just a little too much. Big shapes first, then the medium-sized ones. And if they're not working, all the fancy little brushwork is never it needs to be the icing on the cake. It needs to be those little things that sort of dot the I and cross the T's. So yeah, there's quite a bit of reflected light in under there. That was an interesting little area to do. And that was reflecting off the driveway, which was not a typical colour. It was quite a yellowy colour, and I was almost tempted to change it. But then I thought it's going to just throw the whole reflected light and all of that out just a little too much. So sometimes we've got to be careful when changing something that it doesn't structurally affect the overall painting. So I've timed it fairly well that now I'm able to come in and put the windows in. Sometimes if it's a really big window like the more foreground one I'll start it in, but most of the time I do like to put them wet in wet. And it's almost something that, because they are fairly crucial if you want to paint buildings, houses, it doesn't hurt to even have a little scrapboard, put a bit of paint down and try and paint some some windows. I was going to say also it's great for if you're doing a beach scene or a bit of a city scene, if you want to do some little figures as well. So there's some great little tips there. One of the trickier things I do find is to keep your fluency, your confidence up, that sense of expression with a painting. Ultimately, all it really is experience, but also some quality over quantity. Sometimes if we're doing little exercises like my famous still life little exercise where I set a timer, with this one I think to go with the flavour of the scene, I want it to be passionate and expressive. I think I've got it, but I may even still rework a few little areas, but I'll leave that for a few weeks, maybe even a month, and then I'll rework that area that I'm a little uncertain with. But hope you enjoyed the creative process. All the best. Bye for now.